thanks everyone very much for coming here. We're talking about new financial models for a sustainable entertainment economy, all blockchain. And here we have three pioneers. Of course, internationally renowned artist, musician, producer, Gramatik, and emerging filmmaker, writer, director, Khushnuda Shukurova. And of course, a prolific producer, Nate Bolotin from XYZ. I'm Zach LeBeau, CEO, co-founder of SingularDTV. And probably to put this a little bit more context, I'll have to tell you a little bit about SingularDTV. The thing about blockchain technology is it can be a really chewy, sort of difficult subject because those people who are the practitioners of blockchain, who've created blockchain, inside their brains, they have like 50+ years of computer history, you know? And so, you know, with that sort of frame of reference, it makes perfect sense to them. To those outside of, you know, 50, 60 years of computer history, it can be challenging. But yeah, SingularDTV, so we're a blockchain entertainment studio. And I think we're about 60+ team members right now. We're all over the world. We're headquartered in Zurich, Switzerland, offices in Hong Kong, just opened up one in Tokyo, Auckland, Los Angeles, New York, San Juan, Puerto Rico. International Women's Day happened a few days ago, and yeah, we've got 55% of our team is women, which that's, I didn't know that until International Women's Day. In our effort, in our initiative to build a decentralized entertainment industry, we're building production applications, development applications, distribution applications. So right here, Token is an example of a development application, Rentalist a production application, and EtherVision, our peer-to-peer distribution portal. I'll get into a little bit more about, you know what, we can just do a little video real quick about Token.
Welcome to Token, an evolution in entertainment. Create and control your projects with Token, a new and exciting business structure made possible by blockchain technology is called a tokenized ecosystem. Turn your projects into a tokenized ecosystem with Token. Tokenized ecosystems and tokens give you the ability to manage your intellectual property rights, revenue and royalty flow, as well as connect with your audience in a more meaningful way. Instead of your audience receiving just inspiration from your creative works, they can now share in your success. Never again ask permission from gatekeepers and intermediaries to create your movies, music, books, and more. Engage directly with your audience and grow your global fan base. All revenue and royalties are embedded in your tokens for your audience to immediately withdraw, or they can use your tokens to watch your movies, listen to your music, play your video games, read your books, and more. Go to Token now to learn more. Tokenize anything. Tokenize everything. Token.
It stands for Tokenize It. A lot of people think it actually has some reference to smoking marijuana. I guess it could.
It's also cool.
Yeah. So, but really, yeah, so Bitcoin, we understand that's a digital currency. We understand Bitcoin as that pretty much. What we do with Token is we basically embed intellectual property into tokens when you create a project so that you can then administer and manage your rights and your revenue flow that's generated by that IP. So that's pretty much Token. It's, you know, Gramatik, you've been through it. Kay, you've been through it. You guys have both been through it. We're going through it with Nate. Another thing about Token that a lot of people understand is it's sort of like a crypto Kickstarter as well. So we do a lot of project funding on there. This is just an example of one of them. Singular Japan's launching right now. We've got, it's doing pretty well. 20,000+ Ether have been raised for Singular Japan. Token's something that came out last November, 2017. And by the end of the month, it'll have generated $2 million of revenue so far. So it's going. Rentalist is actually cool because that's a production application. People are like, how do you actually do production on the blockchain? And Rentalist is pretty much just one of, it's like an Airbnb style equipment rental, location service, crew hiring application. You can see some of the interface here. It's in a private beta right now in New York, so it's doing well. It's in the black, and we're going to make it public and roll it out pretty soon, probably next quarter. EtherVision, yeah, this is the rug that ties the room together, so to speak. EtherVision is our peer-to-peer distribution portal. Completely blockchain, it's regionless, it's universal, because you can take projects through Token, create tokens and embed your IP. EtherVision is regionless, it's universal. So I've been on the road for the last 2 months, and it just grates me how I can't watch my favorite movies or my channels or listen to music in like Japan or France or something because of this region stuff, and it has to do with the rights.
Yeah, geo-locked content.
Yeah. Those days are about to be over when we launch EtherVision. EtherVision is coming out in beta later on this year, and a version 1.0 later on this year. We'll talk a little bit about actually your channels that you're going to be creating on EtherVision, because it's going to look pretty much like so many other portals out there, but it's going to be all blockchain, all transparent, all instantaneous. So tokenomics, because it's all about tokenomics. And this is another word that we're introducing. We introduced tokenized ecosystem, now it's tokenomics, and this really is the science of financial blockchain modeling. So we use economics and decentralized computing, game theory, real-world entertainment processes, and that's what tokenomics is all about. So, and of course, tokens, well, these are data vessels. That's pretty much how we're explaining them right now, and what we do is we basically fill these vessels with intellectual property. Now, finally, we'll start with you, Gramatik.
Sure.
I'm gonna play this.
Hey, what's up? This is Gramatik. I come from Portorož, which is a town off the Mediterranean coast on the northern border of Italy. I started doing this when I was pretty much in 7th, 8th grade. It would be hard to define my music. If I have to, there would be, I don't know, some sort of a mixture between hip-hop and electronic music and mixed with funk and soul, I guess. I just never looked at it, music making as a competition of any sort. It's just art, you know. I'm not trying to compete with any other artists or anything. I'm just trying to make the music that I like, that I think it would be like worth listening to. For me to release my own music whenever I want to, you know. Like not having to deal with any middleman, anything, you know, just release my own music and on my own terms and my own label without not having to talk to anybody about it, you know. I just want to get all that bureaucracy out of the way because it's just fucking annoying. You know? I just want to make music, so. I think that internet shouldn't be regulated, and everybody's trying so hard to pass all these bills that would make some sort of like Nazi Germany on the web, where we have no rights, no freedom, completely destroys the internet as we know it, which is totally unacceptable. It's the last free thing we have, you know.
So you kicked everything off pretty much. You were the first to launch on Token.
I guess, yeah. It was. I didn't obviously expect this kind of response, but it was really great to see that people are ready for the future. You know.
You know, one of the really amazing things though about how you blew up and got your music all over the place was you were already thinking in a decentralized, distributed manner from the get-go. Can you just tell everybody a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, so I started making music on a computer when I was like 12 years old. So that was like 98, 99, so about 20 years ago. It was also the same time when internet piracy became a thing. So, and the sole reason I started making music on a computer is because of piracy. You know, I come from a working class family, and at that time it was impossible for people from working class backgrounds to just become music producers, you know, or even like musicians and afford studio hours and stuff like that, or expensive gear, and all that stuff was out of reach for somebody that does not have the resources for it. And my parents couldn't even afford to buy me a computer in the beginning. I was making, you know, we were installing pirated software in my elementary school computer classroom, and at my friend's house at his computer, because he was, you know, his parents had money to buy him a computer. So that's how I started learning to make music. And so if it, you know, piracy happened, and it was like same thing as blockchain today, similar. It was like unregulated. People didn't know how to handle it. Record labels and, you know, film studios were going nuts. Like, what is this? This is, you know, hurting our revenue. And meanwhile, it democratized the process of being involved for, like, you know, regular working class people to be able to make art in that kind of way. So for me, it was, you know, huge, because I was able to, not only did we have access to all this like amazing music, and but also in films, and also like software that started becoming a thing, you know, software and plugins to produce music, and that I wouldn't be able to afford at all. Like, I was 12 years old, even if I, you know, I wouldn't be able to get a job legally, you know. I was in 7th grade, so, and my parents couldn't afford it, so that's the reason I'm here. So,
but you gave back.
Later on, when I grew up and you know, started utilizing common sense and rational thinking, and I achieved some sort of following, I was like, this, you know, it feels weird and hypocritical for me to force my fans to buy my music when I literally like built my entire life based on the fact that piracy was a thing, yeah. You know. So I started putting, you know, I put my entire discography on Pirate Bay, which in turn made me bigger as an artist. I started getting booked for more shows, and people really liked that idea. So my whole philosophy became like, my music will always be primarily free, with an option to donate and buy, and now today stream on every streaming service.
And it's still free to this. It's now.
Yeah, it's still free right now. You can go to my website and download my entire discography for free. And that was, you know, when I did that, there was no Spotify, there was no streaming industry.
Right.
It was just people buying music. There was iTunes, you know, and people buying CDs still. So later on, streaming became a thing, and now it's irrelevant, because most people don't buy music anymore. They just want to stream it, and which is great. And the streaming revolution only addressed one part of the problem in terms of piracy. They addressed the consumers. So for me as a music listener, streaming services are great. I pay $10 a month, and I have every album possible available to me to listen at any time, you know. Right. They did not, however, address, for me as an artist, streaming services are still horrible because they pay us shit. So they only took care of the consumer issue, and they were like, let's take care of the consumers, because they're the ones that are pirating, and who gives a shit about the artist? They'll have to deal with us, you know? And for me, blockchain addresses both issues, you know, in terms of like what this technology can do, and eliminating intermediaries and you know, gatekeepers. In that way, I think that finally we get to address both issues, you know.
And so now the challenge is really, how do we take, because what Gramatik launched last November was the Gramatik token, GRMTK, 100 million of these, and this is a very simplified version of just basic tokenomics. The Gramatik tokenized ecosystem was launched, and in doing so, 25% of the tokens were launched to the public. The public bought those for, I think it was like 7,500 Ether, somewhere around there, which equaled at that time about $2.25 million. And then, of course, there's a reserve, all right? So Gramatik's holding on to a reserve of roughly 75% tokens, Gramatik tokens. So the whole point, really, is to take that $2.25 million worth of Ether and create projects, music, albums, movie, whatever you're inspired to create.
Yeah, precisely. And like you said before, Token works in a way like a Kickstarter on the blockchain, except that the main difference is that in Kickstarter, you get a coffee mug and a T-shirt, while on Token, you get to own a piece of the artist's
Gramatik.
intellectual property, which
Right.
is indescribably better and more valuable than a coffee mug, you know.
So yeah, it's a new kind of relationship, right? So now, whatever you put on your EtherVision channel, on your Gramatik EtherVision channel, basically the entire point is to have participation and consumption of your audience and fan on your EtherVision channel, which theoretically, and this is what we're going to prove, theoretically increases the value of the Gramatik token, so that when you need to create more, you just liquidate a few of your reserve tokens, and then you're off making whatever you want to make.
Precisely, yeah.
So how do we do that when you're giving your music away? That's one of the questions that we're talking about solving. And actually, I just put this in there because this is like a really simplified version of tokenomics, and this is kind of what it looks like when we're at the drawing board. So I just threw that in real quick, but we'll continue on. So the interesting thing about that artists and projects have a choice when they're creating their EtherVision channel is the different kind of models that you can actually bootstrap your channel with. So of course there's, you know, for yours, and thank you for being, you know, the space monkey guinea pig pioneer here.
I love it.
But you know, we can outfit your channel with a freemium model, where you can still give your music away, and maybe certain WAV files or really, you know, higher quality stuff.
That's how it is right now too. All the music is available in like high quality MP3s, but if you want WAV or FLAC, like lossless formats, then you can buy them, you know.
Right. So we can reproduce that for your channel. Also, there's the option of actually having a revenue model as well. So really simple. Any revenue that does come in for any of your content on your channel, that goes directly into the token, and at a press of a button, you can withdraw that anytime you want. So you're not waiting 30, 60 days, or not getting paid at all from providers. There's also C, which is a utility consumption model, and this is kind of interesting because this is going down the route of, all right, the more participation, the more consumption of your content on your channel, then underneath the hood, we're taking a certain amount of Gramatik tokens and burning them after usage, which basically creates a deflationary economy. So as demand increases, supply decreases, and theoretically on the secondary markets, the Gramatik token's value goes up. And of course, D, there's more choices than just this, but we're not going to get into those today. But D is a mixture of all of them. So we could basically do a mixture with your channel, and that's what we're going to start figuring out when we do the beta of EtherVision, because technically we could be burning tokens on the free model as well, and as long as there's participation and consumption, the Gramatik token supply will decrease.
Yeah.
And people will want to be a part of owning Gramatik tokens because it represents your IP on the blockchain. It's also your cryptocurrency as well. So, but
yeah, that makes sense.
But this is what we're figuring out. You know, it's so young. We're in the beginning days here of blockchain technology. It's 1994, 95 of the internet, and you know, we're figuring it out as we go. And we've got a lot of really great minds and great artists that we're doing it with.
Yeah, it's really exciting for me, like you said, to be a guinea pig, even like just to be a part of this in this way. I think that this, you know, or some form of this will be the future of you know, entertainment and content creation. There's, you know, any other kind of models are, you know, somebody gets hurt, you know, like whatever we have today, even like I said, with streaming services and similar platforms, there's always somebody that's left out, that's being hurt in order just somebody to make $1 billion, you know?
Yeah. Usually it's the artists and content creators.
Yeah. Right now, artists are the ones that are like left behind, you know?
Yeah. Nate's. I know. I see you shaking your head over there.
It's been a bad couple days.
Well, we might as well actually. This is the interesting thing about EtherVision as well. It's not just music, it's movies, it's television, it's podcasts, it's games, it's apps, it's all these things. So that's where we're moving toward with blockchain and distribution. why not go to one place for everything? I mean, you have more ambition than just making music. You do other things.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. With my partner, we create short films and write stories and trying to get into making feature movies. And I score with my friend Lucas, who's also at my label. We scored a bunch of short movies, and we're getting into features as well. So like my whole, since high school days, I've always wanted to create music and be involved in some form or the other, like in filmmaking, even if it's just scoring or producing and stuff like that. So tying music and films together has been my dream since as long as I can remember.
Right, so now on your EtherVision channel, you'll be able to go to Gramatik's channel and experience all of this, not just his music. So,
Precisely.
but yeah, Nate, we're doing a sci-fi film together. It's hard to call it a film. Maybe it's a film, maybe it's an anthology, maybe it's a television series. I don't know, but we get to explore these new categories now because we're doing it on the blockchain on an EtherVision channel. So I don't know, what is it exactly? That
New Frontiers is a sci-fi anthology that was essentially invented by a filmmaker named Rory Robinson, who came up with a pretty brilliant idea to explore a particular new world universe that he's a world building kind of filmmaker.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we struggle with is that a movie like that is extremely hard to finance through the traditional models of independent film financing. And we were very passionate about figuring out a path towards it. So if it was a series or a feature film format, we were flexible. And obviously we were very fortunate to meet SingularDTV, and you believed in the collective team's vision in terms of what we were trying to do with it. And I truly believe that the audience for this film, the right audience for this film, will discover it through your platform.
Yeah, for me, it's actually the best sci-fi script I've ever read. So I'm really super excited about it. And I love sci-fi. SingularDTV is very heavy into sci-fi. But and we'll get into a little bit about film financing here in a moment, but the tokenomics around New Frontiers is interesting because we really wanted to achieve two things with New Frontiers and its token economic model. The number one objective is to recoup the production budget of New Frontiers before it's ever released. And number two is once it's released, to be able to, through participation and consumption of New Frontiers, to increase the value of the New Frontiers token. So all you need to do is liquidate the token in order to pay for sequel number 2 or season number 2. So really, this test is all about creating a film franchise or a television series model. And that's what we're going to do. And of course, we need a really strong project in order to prove it, and that's New Frontiers.
Yeah, and I believe the visuals for it will help too. It's just to be able to build assets, visual assets that we can use as promotional tools to be able to show people that you can make incredible looking studio quality sci-fi films without enormous budgets, and at the same time be able to give the fans and consumers something that they can actually invest in and own a piece of as we grow this economy. And who knows where it goes from there. There's obviously the sky's the limit in terms of derivative rights and how we sort of grow the universe from there and the characters. And we don't even know what consumers and fans are going to start to latch on to. And that's going to be the beauty of it, is to really kind of build something that's somewhat organic, that's being driven in many ways by the ultimate sort of end user here.
Can you imagine if this happened back in like the 70s, what a Star Wars token would be worth right now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. So I guess that's what we're doing now, is this sort of thing. But yeah, film financing. That's a number of, I see you shaking your head before about when we were talking about financing. Did you want to even dive into a little bit of the friction and pain points of that right now and see how our model can fix it?
Yes, I'll summarize it. I mean, I don't know how many people here actually have been involved in independent film financing, but it's an incredibly distressed and broken model that has been actually broken for quite a while. And it's continued to be the only way that we actually are able to make independent films. And obviously Netflix and Amazon and some of the bigger streaming services have come to the table and started to provide other avenues for getting these films made. But obviously the studios don't make these movies anymore. And so the way that these films are traditionally made is through a combination of collateralized debt, government subsidies and tax credits, and some private equity and other complicated financing instruments. And unfortunately, because of the way the world is broken up, territory by territory, it's extremely inefficient. The friction is extremely deep, and there's corruption on so many intermediary levels that at the end of the day, as the actual producer and owner of the IP and the creator, you are so far away from the end user in terms of revenue flow and the waterfall of gross receipts that it's practically impossible for you to make a profit on an independent film.
Yeah, it's criminal.
Yeah, and this is what we're trying to solve actually with tokenized ecosystems. And the sheer fact that the New Frontier token represents the IP of New Frontiers, and the producers, the creators have control over how its rights and revenue flow through the interface that we've created. That's where theoretically we don't need those intermediaries in those territories anymore. And that is what we're going to put to test with New Frontiers once we launch EtherVision, once it's finished. Yeah, we've got a video to express for you right now too, Kay. So let's just jump into this 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Khushnuda Shukurova. I'm from Tajikistan, and I work as a filmmaker in New York now. I grew up during the Civil War. I was 6 years old at that time, and I didn't know what war was, but I felt it with hunger and fear. Luckily for us, the war ended, and I had a chance to go to school, and I graduated from high school, and I went to journalism school. I wanted to tell stories of people. Afterwards, I landed an internship at National Geographic for 6 months. This is when I made my transition to come to East Coast. My internship ended, and I moved to New York. Here in New York, I started my school at the new school. I studied film. And after my first year, I went back to Tajikistan. There I met this wonderful woman, Nadira. For 4 days, I was following her, documenting her life. I started cutting my documentary together, and to my surprise, a BBC producer reached out, and he wanted to see my documentary, and I signed a contract with them. New York is a very beautiful place to be as an independent filmmaker, but also it's very competitive because as an independent filmmaker you rely on funds, and there are a lot of competition around. My next film is called Detained, and it's about 2 refugee brothers coming to the United States at the time of executive orders that stopped 7 major Muslim countries from entering. The film deals with 2 brothers going through the airport checkups while being interrogated by the Custom and Border police officer. As a filmmaker, I cannot stop the war, but I can tell the stories of people who went through war.
So, Kate, you launched your token actually right after Gramatik.
That was stressful.
Did you say stressful? Yes?
Because
Yeah.
Gramatik had his huge fan base, and I was like, I'm just an emerging filmmaker. And so I was kind of worried.
I mean, I was worried already, so I can only imagine.
But it went successful, and that was great because I didn't expect it to be so successful, knowing that I didn't have a big name, and those people who supported my project, not knowing even, they only knew about what you just watched, and they also knew that this project was a script in development stage.
Right.
And
Detained is a short film.
yes.
And basically what you did was you launched a tokenized ecosystem with, what was it, 1 million tokens, right?
Yes.
And then you just took a portion of those, 50,000, I think?
Yes.
And you sold those 50,000 to raise the $50,000 needed because you went one for one. One Khushnuda token is worth $1, and to raise the money to make Detained.
Yeah, correct.
So now that gives you the opportunity to basically show the world what you can do with your short film, and then basically mount a campaign after Detained is out in the world to hopefully raise the value of your token, and also to launch another funding round for your next project.
I can't wait. Well, Detained is right now in pre-production. So we raised the money, and I'm very excited. It's my first big budget short film. This is what I call it. And I think it was successful because Talkit had this like platform for independent filmmakers like me. And I think also knowing that I can interact with my audience, and there's my audience who directly can support my projects, not even knowing my film. It's in development project. I mean, like stage, and that was like very, I guess, touching, like being like supported by fans. I also can make more projects. That's why I tokenize myself as an artist, because first it was Detained. Then when I learned the potential of Talkit, then I was talking to you, and you offer like, why don't you do this as an artist, and you can do more film than one. And I didn't think about it first, but then it made sense, because after this, I'm looking forward to make my film, and then maybe jump into my second, hopefully.
Tell everyone.
Yeah, before Detained, I wrote this feature film about the first Taekwondo female getting into Tajik national team, because before it was all males. And then at one point, the championship kind of like restricted Tajikistan, saying like gender equality should be like considered, and then they should have a women in the team. And then they got a woman in the team, and she exceeded expectation, of course, and then she won not only the first place as a Taekwondo player, but also in kickboxing at the same tournament. So I wrote this about her journey, and it's a drama, and her life being a female from a very conservative country and making it to the Taekwondo team all the way. So.
For me, really, all of the work that, all of the hours and sometimes the tears that it's taken to build all of this, for me, it becomes all worthwhile when it can make a project like yours possible.
It's all because of Talkit.
Is there a clap there? Yeah, no, it's really great too, because there's just some amazing talent that's coming onto Talkit and creating tokens and launching their projects. And I'll just go on a little tangent here, but one of them is Javier Borollo, who's this Guatemalan filmmaker who just came out of nowhere and made a token and said, I'm making a movie. I don't care how much I raise, whatever I raise, I'm going to make that movie in Guatemala, And I'm like, so I ended up talking to him. I'm like, Javier, what's the film industry like in Guatemala? And he was like, well, if you have a camera, you're the film industry. It's like 3 or 4 films maybe are made a year down there. And so, yeah, he got on Talkit, and he was only looking for like $80,000 or $90,000 to make his movie, and he got it, and now he's down there sending us stills of on set, just can't wait to get it finished so he can actually put it on his EtherVision channel. So
that's great.
Yeah, and also I have to use Casey Pearl as an example too, because Casey Pearl is a musician. She's a singer. She's a really talented singer out of London. And she's never made an album before. She's had the opportunity to, but she never took the deal because they always wanted to change who she was. So she just decided, forget it, I'm not going to make an album then. And you know, she's a school teacher of autistic children in London. She found Toket, came on a Toket, and she raised enough money to make her first album.
I think it's great that it enables you know, people from all around the world to just utilize this new technology through the internet, you know, and even in remote areas, you know, where like Civil War torn parts and people in like less fortunate backgrounds. You know, it's interesting. You mentioned you were 6 years old when the Civil War started. Like I grew up in Yugoslavia, and I was also 6 years old when our Civil War started. So it's a coincidence that two of us are sitting on the stage. But this is the thing that enables, like you said before, no geo-locked content and no like you mentioned, you know, local corruption that prevents you from actually earning back even just to break even on your project. It's almost impossible, and this eliminates all that, you know.
When you've been telling your colleagues and your peers about what you're doing with New Frontiers, has there been curiosity, interest, acceptance? What's it feel like out there?
I mean, in short, there's a lot of curiosity, and I think there's a certain degree of excitement because people are starting to recognize that there's another option, and it feels good to know that this other option is tangible and you know, and has a real technology behind it that can you know, obviously create solutions for a lot of these problems. And you know, I think for a lot of producers who do similarly what I do, but also I think that in different capacities, have all dealt with obviously the hurdles and the problems with what's going on, and so people are obviously very much looking to try to find another option. I can tell you that every day that goes by, there's more and more information that is obviously illuminating people's minds about what the opportunities are. And I'm really hoping that New Frontiers, you know, sets the stage for a lot of this. I know that you're obviously working on other films, and so New Frontiers will be perhaps one of several, but I really truly believe that, at least in my peer network, to be able to point to that example and to also be able to articulate it and walk, and by the way, also like the various different representatives on the agency and management side who represent these artists need to also be educated. I think there's going to be a certain learning curve, as you know, for people. I think that a lot of people in the film industry have a difficulty connecting with this part of what we're doing.
Yeah, they're afraid.
They're afraid, and but you know what? Even myself, as somebody who has a licensing business that brokers and does transactions for distribution around the world, I welcome that disruption because we're a filmmaker-driven company, and we believe wholeheartedly in the IP and the creator and the artist. And the only reason why we created a transactional sales agency is that we could control our own destiny and get movies financed. That's the whole reason why we created it. We weren't a sales agent first, we were a producer first. We created the sales agency as a means to finance content. And if this opportunity, you know, if these options are available to the artists and to us, then, you know, I think that, you know, it's, no pun intended, but it's a new frontier.
You know, and what's interesting too, because we're actually programming intellectual property into tokens and giving an interface to control and administer the rights and revenue, basically anyone in the audience, for example, could start your own channel on EtherVision, and you could take Gramatik's music, Kay's movies, New Frontiers, put it on your channel, go out there and sell it all you want, and they're still going to get paid. They're actually going to get all of that money. So that'll be interesting to see how piracy, just through the convenience of accessibility, how that issue is dealt with. You know, and for example, I mean, that's actually kind of a curator model on EtherVision too. So anybody can do this, and it's not necessarily that sales agents or distributor intermediaries will be, you know, become extinct. They'll just have the opportunity to adapt, evolve into some other business model, and this curation model's one of them.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah.
All they would do is basically just probably charge a transaction fee to make money, and they'll be able to use any of the content that you create.
But I actually do believe there are too many sales agents, and I do think there are too many intermediaries. Okay. And it's true. And I really do hope that there's, to some degree, a market correction. And for some, I understand that that could be detrimental to their personal well-being. But unfortunately, it's robbing the artists, and it's disabling consumers from being able to consume content at a price point that makes sense, and for the artists to be able to generate revenue that's well-earned.
Yeah, these businesses were built on an unfair basis, you know. That's why, you know, even if it's like threatening to their well-being, it's at some point it has to change because it's not fair, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting to see these models that, there's a lot of interesting models out there that aren't sustainable, and the whole point of what we're doing with SingularDTV and tokenomics is to find these sustainable business models. And is there anyone in the crowd from Netflix by chance? Okay, I just was wondering, so we can talk freely. But no, it's just interesting to me, like I use their model as an example because it's just basically to spend in a attempt, via brute force, make a new industry. But when you start having to borrow money just to pay back your debt or the interest on your debt, then that's kind of like a runaway freight train on fire going off a cliff eventually.
Yeah, isn't like Netflix like $2 or $3 billion in debt just so they can create all this content? It's like
more.
Yeah,
More than that, yeah. Well, that's the thing. In with this entire tokenomics and blockchain, there's no concept of debt. It just doesn't. It doesn't even.
It's not programmed into the technology.
No. That's like we're talking fractional reserve banking sort of stuff. That.
Yeah, precise thing that blockchain is trying to eliminate.
Yeah. So Nate, how do you see it then? You know, because XYZ is producer and distributor. Do you think in order for companies to be able to thrive and survive in this centralized legacy mentality, you've got to become your own, I guess, essentially mini studio in a way?
Yeah, I believe that the only way you can survive is as a content creator. I think that if you, and that's not to say that there isn't a role out there as a manager, as an advisor. I really do believe that management and advisory services are valuable.
I agree.
For career purposes and strategy and connecting dots. I really believe in that. And I don't think that what we're talking about here is disruptive to that.
Yeah, you can't expect artists to be well versed in that. They have to focus on the art.
And there's experts in the field, and they can bring a lot of value to that. And there's obviously going to be, you know, different aspects of the supply chain that will add value. But what we're talking about here are gatekeepers who think they know what audiences want and believe that they're the ones that are going to be able to master that.
So Kay, how is it in Tajikistan, the film industry there? Because Tajikistan has a healthy amount of gatekeepers themselves, right? It's one of the reasons why you came to the United States to be a filmmaker?
Yeah, I mean, basically in Tajikistan, the film industry is not as good because of the post-Soviet collapse. It's a post-Soviet country, and everything was good during Soviet time. Well, they said it was good, but but then everything changed. There's no funding for films. We get the only source, I think, it's international. It's coming from Europe, and then it's also very competitive to get those funds to make your film. But I came here like 10 years ago, so maybe something has changed. Not sure, but they're making some films, but it's, I mean, like they don't get far. They only can be distributed around the Central Asia, and the filmmakers, I know a couple, but they never get their movies out. And this is what is, I think, great about Asia region, where I can put my films and everyone around the world can watch them. I think this is kind of something that any filmmaker wants to see. I mean, at least for me, it's for me making films is for audience, and my audience see my films. This is, I think, the only reason you make films. And Toket is like raise money, and then you get your funding, and you make your film the way you want it, so no one can influence your film, like your script.
Well, I just want to say for everybody that's new to this technology and cryptosphere in general, to just, you know, do as much as you can to learn and single out good like media sources and platforms and publications out there. They're doing a really good job of explaining this to the regular public. The best way to do due diligence is, you know, to do your own research and follow, you know, platforms and companies like Consensus and people who are actually developing this market and this platform to become, you know, a mainstream viable platform of distributing and content creation. So it's important to read and try to get good sources, you know, to understand what's actually happening.
Well, for me, I would say, like, don't be afraid of it. Just learn about blockchain, learn about cryptocurrencies, and Talkit and SingularDTV, and there are a lot of people who can help you with that, too, in SingularDTV. And if you're a filmmaker and you want to fund your film, don't be scared and learn about Talkit and start your campaign, and it's going to be successful.
Gramatik, Kay, Nate, thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.